Hi, everybody. I'm Bret, CEO of Zapper, and the talk that I would like to take you through today is the rising importance of fintech innovation in the new age. It's a bit of a mouthful, but I'll take you through it as we go. I thought the most logical place to start would be to define what innovation is, because I thought to myself, I have a very good idea, or I think I do, of what innovation is. So I just wanted to verify that quickly. So I jumped onto the Google machine and did a bit of search, and these are the results that I came up with. So the first one that surfaced was innovation is the creation, development, and implementation of a new product, I've bolded that, process or service, and the aim of improving efficiency, effectiveness, or competitive advantage. I like it, and obviously I've highlighted the new and improving words there, and I'll obviously explain why in a few minutes. The innovation of so the second result that I quite liked was the one that I found on Wikipedia, and this is obviously taking excerpts of that. But innovation is commonly defined as the carrying out of a new combination that include the introduction of new goods. And innovation is something original and more effective, and as a consequence, new, that breaks into the market or society. Now, the word combination is critical to the rest of my explanation of what I believe to be important in terms of innovation in the fintech space. So in my opinion, iteration leads to innovation. So, I think then it's important to then define what iteration means in development. So the definition that I uncovered yet again on Google, a means of obtaining successively closer approximations to the solution of a problem. So getting there, time and after several attempts effectively. This is the agile sort of empirical or iterative loop that is quite well known in the industry. So basically the premise is have an idea and then hypothesize that idea and then iterate from there. So the idea is, have the idea, build it as quickly and as efficiently as possible in a sort of MVP, minimum viable product model, get that into a prototype, get it out into the hands of whoever your market or test group is, get feedback and measure the efficacy of that solution that you put out there, get all the data, learn from that data, and apply those learnings back into the product again and put it back into the loop as such. Go back into the building, the prototyping, the measuring, learning, and just keep that loop going. So the last decade, I thought it was important to just kind of cover what's really been, I suppose, in this space, the biggest leap into innovation in fintech is the mobile device. So converging traditional real world physical utilities, services, and people into internet-enabled devices. So, a lot of us will have seen many graphics like this over the years where people talk about, what happened with the MP3 with Apple and the iPod, and, what happened with books and the Kindle. A lot of those devices, so the iPod itself is basically deprecated in favor of the mobile device. The Kindle, although a great device, I have one, you can have the app on your mobile phone as well. And then obviously all these other sort of physical real world objects that have now been digitized, and this is just scratching the surface of all of that. But, things from big industries like gaming consoles to, things like compasses and physical real world maps, all digitized, your car key to your radio, your contact list, your telephone, your, from watching streaming services in terms of video, the slow death of the television as we know it. A lot of laptops and computers are now being, sort of sidelined in favor of mobile devices and portability. Your camera, of course, everybody's a professional budding photographer these days. With the help of their fancy mobile devices. And then obviously in our space, the card machine or the terminal that I'm showing you here, and the credit card or debit card that's visible there. That's really the space that we're in right now as far as fintech is concerned. There's a lot of innovation happening around tap and go payments on mobile devices. There's a lot of innovation happening around different forms of tokenization and sort of card on file to allow those transactions to take place. I'm not going to delve into all the technicalities of all of that today, but just wanted to lightly touch on that. And then obviously this little memoji of people. So, basically our whole lives have been kind of ported from the physical world into our mobile devices, as we all well know. So where we're at now, I believe is kind of the age of the mashup, where all of those services that have now been digitized from the physical world into our mobile devices, a lot of those services were very proprietary in the early days, but a lot of that is being opened up now with APIs that are being made available to developers to kind of riff on those APIs and those services to combine different services in weird and wonderful ways. So like geolocation and what that did for Uber, for example, is a prime example of what can be done when you take two different services that have been digitized and used in an interesting way. So new combinations, back to that description that I pulled up right in the beginning of the presentation, new combinations that include the introduction of new goods, a new age of open APIs, cloud services, and obviously I've used the word hackers, but not to be cool, but I mean, it's just basically, the development community out there, people that are playing around with these APIs and coming up with new and wonderful ways of utilizing them. And then obviously partnerships, being able to partner with other providers in the market, whether they, the schemes or banks or, fintechs or any of the cloud service providers. Ultimately, there's a lot of opportunity out there to actually play around with these really cool technologies that, in the past you would have had to build yourself and probably done them badly, where these are readily available and relatively inexpensive, some of them free. So, from, what's happening in chat with WhatsApp to if this then that is a great example of a application that basically takes a whole bunch of different services and open APIs and allows you to create these little recipes that do different actions depending on the input. And then all these different cloud service providers. Obviously, I'm not going to delve into the detail of that. The two examples here of OfferZen and Investec, I thought I'd throw those in there just because of what they're doing from a community perspective in the developer space. Investec is probably one of the only banks, as far as I know anyway, that have opened up APIs to developers to tinker with and play around with. And OfferZen is working closely with them to try and build a community around that, which I find quite interesting. Hopefully Zapper is going to get involved in there soon. So on to the next slide. So, part of this innovation in the fintech space is really around exploring different technologies. Zapper's obviously biased towards the QR code, and I can delve into a lot of the reasons, but the primary reason is that QR is very cheap from an acceptance perspective. It can be, it can be as rudimentary as printed on a black and white laser printer on a piece of paper. It can be etched into a table. It can be digitally rendered on your own mobile device screen or on a POS, customer facing screen. It can be used on e-commerce. It can be used on parking tickets. It can be used on printed bills. It can be, you don't need an expensive device or, internet connectivity in order to be able to accept transactions as a merchant or I suppose as a consumer in a peer-to-peer environment. Then there's obviously NFC, which is great, for tap and go payments. And as I said earlier, that's now kind of moving from the traditional card machines to mobile devices. Again, yet another device that is now very rapidly moving to the mobile space. Bluetooth, we all well know. Biometrics over the last couple of years between your sort of fingerprints and your facial recognition. A lot of that in terms of transactions and being able to make payments, there might well come a time. In fact, there already is. If you look at Amazon's, these prototype stores that they're bringing into the market, or at least trialing, is the ability to transact and purchase goods without actually having to do anything as a result, to make that payment. And that's through, facial recognition and all that kind of stuff to be able to understand what products have been chucked into your basket and, have that automatically deducted from your account. Things like proximity services, whether it's geolocation or, Bluetooth beacons or, whatever the case may be, there's different proximity-based interactions that can be introduced. And then there's other technologies like near sound data transfer that is quite new and interesting. I don't know of any real world use cases, especially in the South African market yet, that's being used, but I believe there are companies in foreign markets that are introducing that into the payment space as well. So it's quite interesting. There's a lot of different ways that we can, play around with these technologies to introduce new, interesting consumer or payment journeys. I've used the word Finnovation. Yeah, please don't judge me. It just was easier for me to make a shorter title. But innovation in fintech is, it requires grit, it requires creativity and agility. So just to sum that up, in such a regulated market, with a high rate of change and the expense of development, fintechs need to be creative, gritty, and agile in order to challenge the status quo and drive change and innovate fast. So, you need to be able to move quickly, put back to that empirical loop or that iterative loop. You need to be able to play around with these different APIs and these different services and try and introduce new ways of performing transactions and doing that in a cost-effective and sort of I'm losing the word here, but basically you need to be able to move quickly and do it with and fail inexpensively, effectively. If you want to create new change in the market, it's very difficult to do that with regulation as it stands. And we're trying to introduce new different forms of payment, whether it's over card rails, whether it's instant EFT, or whether it's how that card is stored on file in order to create new interchanges, or at least try and achieve different interchanges. It's an interesting space that we're in right now. I believe that it's not going to be too long before all of that becomes a lot simpler, especially with European markets introducing things like open banking. It's a really interesting space, but in order to stay ahead in this space, you need to be testing these different technologies as and when they become available, and pushing the limits of that. So what is Zapper doing in this space? So this is a bit of a punt, but what Zapper is doing is we've been working really hard to build out a platform, and that platform is basically a suite of developer APIs and SDKs that enable third parties to deeply integrate and white label Zapper capabilities into their own apps and acceptance systems. So that's basically a two-tiered or two different sides to that platform. So from a third party can integrate the ability to accept Zapper transactions into their point of sale systems, into their payment gateways, into their point of sale, their point of sale card terminals, into e-commerce websites, onto their billing systems, parking systems, you name it. We provide them the ability to accept QR transactions through those APIs. And then we provide third parties the ability to integrate the Zapper app capabilities directly into their own mobile applications. They can design it from a UI perspective however they like, but they can interface with our APIs to store payment instruments, their debit cards or credit cards. They can scan and decode Zapper, both Zapper's proprietary QR codes and Zapper's supported QR codes from third parties, and facilitate transactions over the Zapper rails. So that API, or that set of APIs, is readily available to the market, and we're already seeing a lot of growth in that space between banks and fintechs in the South African market that are already utilizing that. I think Capitec have literally just launched announced their update to their application that now supports the scanning and paying of multiple QR codes in the market, including Zapper, and that is through this platform, with many more to come. So we're very excited to be playing in this space, and hope to be growing the market in general, not just for Zapper, but to drive the market towards an open standard of interoperability that allows the fintechs and the banks and everyone to enjoy the benefit of more QR in the market. Thank you.